Hi, everyone, and welcome to an all new episode of The Latest Thread. And today on The Latest Thread, we are going to play with a stencil. I found a border stencil. I think we've done these shows with some stencils before with block ideas, and we've all used the stencil to come up with a design idea. But this time we thought it might be kind of fun to do a border instead because, sometimes it's easy to figure out what to do in the blocks. And then when you get to the border, it's like, now what? What do I do there? So you're going to see some variations of one design, hopefully get a lot of ideas and some inspirations on how to use a stencil to come up with a design. So we're going to share our screen with you. And just give me 1 second to do that. And just a nod from you guys that you guys can see that. Yeah. Perfect. Yes. Awesome. Okay. So I got to pick. So I went on quiltingstencils.com and I just looked at some different border ideas and I found this one. It's called the continuous banner. It is an 8-inch size, but I mean, it doesn't mean that if you come up with a design that you draw on the structure of the stencil, it doesn't mean that you have to quilt it out at 8 inches. Unless you were to purchase the stencil, then it kind of gives you those points to work off of. But it's a really good way to just get ideas and go and take a look at some of the stencils that are there and doodle and have some fun. And then if you find one that you absolutely need to have for your design, then you know where that you can get it from. So this is the stencil design, and we're going to go through the pictures and we're going to each tell you a little bit about the design that we came up with. First again. All right, so on my border design, I just put some half feathers across the bottom. And when I get to the section where it becomes the second row of the border, I just added a little like a teardrop and then filled it with swirls. And so I'm not really using the stencil markings. I'm just using them as guides to don't go past this point. So just to evenly space your design. Yes. Right. Yeah.
A great idea.
Yeah. So you would mark, what would you mark?
I would mark the tops of both. That's all I would mark.
Yeah. That just gives you that perimeter to stay within. Yeah.
It's nice to have those perimeter markings. It really makes it look very symmetrical and organized and works well.
Yeah, but I think I would have to mark the whole stencil.
I would too.
It's
just easy. It's faster. Let's put it that
way.
Well,
if you're pouncing it, it's way faster. If you're marking with a pen, no, just the two lines.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, I would need those bottom where you put the half feathers in order for it to stay even across. I wouldn't trust myself by just marking the top. But that's where we are different. I need better training wheels to Karen, I guess.
My training wheels were just pushed down the hill. There you go.
Sink or swim.
So you draw it out and color in the lines. All right, next one.
So for this one, I mean, I would, of course, mark the whole stencil, and I really just want the points, like, the tops and the bottom points, and just zigzag across, because then, of course, it's continuous over, back. And then I guess you could leave the centers open. But even for me anyway, looking at that stencil, if you were to stitch what's actually on it and just let it be at 8 inches, that's a really lot of open in the middle. So then I decided, no, I'd put a zigzag back and forth straight down through, again, point to point.
You wouldn't add the arcs and stitch those?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you could.
Yeah, and because I'm just looking at it, I keep seeing the arcs, and I think, me personally, I like what you did, but looking at the stencil itself and with the arcs, it would soften it a little bit more, and it's like continuous curve you can already use if you do the arcs at the end, you know.
Sure. Well, but like for me, I'm all about the straight lines. So I like
I
the
know.
clean, hard look of that. So, you
And the
know,
nice thing about doing it in the way that you did it, Jody, was that even if you did decide to go put the arcs in, sometimes it's a good idea to just quilt some of the basics first and then stand back
yeah.
and look at it and go, do I really need that?
Yeah.
Or yeah, it needs something else. And then you could always, that arc design would be really easy to put in after the fact.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a curvy girl.
No, but
Well,
you do some pebbles, and there's a lot of space here that could be filled in
Sure.
with some pebbling.
Yeah. Just depends, you know, how much time you
Yeah.
want to.
Right.
that's
And I
true.
agree with Sharon. There's a lot of times that I'll do something and I'll look at it and it's like, golly gee willikers, you know, that would benefit from just a little bit more of something, you know. So sometimes it is good just to kind of live with it for a little bit and then see what you do if you want to add to it or whatever.
Yeah.
It does have that really nice Art Deco kind of look to it too. So also, you know, if you're looking at this on a border of some kind of Art Deco kind of quilt, this would be really just perfect.
Well, it helps that Jody used the orange,
Yes,
that,
it did.
that
Yes,
particular
for
color
sure.
marking pencil.
For sure.
Now, in addition to, you know, we often struggle with borders because they're maybe not wide enough, or you can't think of anything that doesn't take away from what's in the body of the quilt. So this is actually a really nice, I would call it a nondescript design, you know, that really goes with anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice.
You'd be able to embellish it however you wanted.
Oh, cool.
Well, I guess I'm more of a curvy girl, and like Jody just mentioned, but we all know that's a fact. But anyhow, I was looking at that, seeing clamshells. And so I thought, you know, at first I was drawing around doing fan blades inside, but that didn't stand out enough. And I thought this design to fill in, yeah, you have to kind of backtrack on the stems, you know, to make them. But even if you miss, it's not a big deal. It's just adding something, I thought, to fill the space that separates the inside from those swag outer portions, and then just fill it in with straight lines.
So are you quilting the actual stencil too? Or is that
I am.
okay? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I guess I should have marked it, but no. But yes,
Yeah, because I was just about to ask the same thing. If you're only stitching the top and bottom lines, or you're stitching all lines. Yeah, I was.
yeah, that would be important to mention. And yes, because I mentioned earlier, I would mark the whole stencil no matter how I would use it. And yes, in this case, you have to stitch the lines.
You know, it's funny how you said that you experimented with fan blades and that when you first saw it, you thought of the clamshell. So for everyone else here that's watching, just so you know, we don't see each other's designs ahead of time to decide how we're going to do ours. They all just end up so different on their own. And I thought to myself while I was drawing this, because I started with a fan blade, so I was like, ooh, I see a clamshell. And I was like, oh, dang it, Ava's gonna do that. I drew the fan blades like you were saying, and it was way too many like arced lines and not enough interest of anything else in there. And then I was like, Ava's gonna do it anyway.
But see, that's when you have to not stitch some of the stencil too. Just use it for reference lines.
Yeah, for space.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's cute.
It is. This is mine. And this, I just decided it had curves. I was going to make some more. So
it looks very genie.
It does, doesn't it? I would stitch the top line of the stencil and the bottom line of the stencil, and then I would just use that middle line in there as a reference for where I'm making those wishbones. And then the other is just a simple little up and into a swirl. and add a few extra to cover it up. But if you wanted to do this as a 4-inch border, then I would eliminate that middle little heart looking swirls and move that bottom, just wavy swirl across the bottom and then back across the top. And then that would make you a nice 4-inch border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the nice thing about a larger stencil. If you're into buying stencils, maybe the larger ones you'd get more use out of because you can still use them for the smaller spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
And one tip too on that. So I have like a lot of the stencils I have that I do that. If I look at it and I say, oh, well, I could always use half of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take like my cutting ruler usually and line it up and take a Sharpie and mark like a black line. Just so that if I do end up using just half, it's easier to line it up with whatever than trying to look at every individual point on the stencil and make sure that you've, lined it up right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really
That's a
cute. I
good
like
idea.
the wishbones in there.
I always want to call them herringbones. I don't know why, but I love them.
Super cute. Really cute inside there. And I think we've all left ours open up till this point. So I think Jeannie's the first one that has actually put one just in that space. So it's another great idea used for the stencil.
Ooh,
And that one is mine. I guess I should mention right away before talking about the design. It's just something that I like to do when I'm drawing and I'm practicing on a screen. I like to take the picture and it's on, I'm not depending on what program you use to draw, but I like to change the transparency of the picture so that the color is less saturated and the lines are a little bit more like in the background and muted. Because when I looked at my design with the full color, like that's full color, it was really distracting to the design that I actually came up with. So just by like changing or even changing it to grayscale even helps. And your printout or your printable handout that you'll get for this border design will be in grayscale, just because it's easier to kind of see your own vision for it and not be distracted as much by the lines that are there. So I used the bottom where everything joins in, and then the top, and just ignored this center line point here and made my first large arc. So my big feather flower petal design is forefront, and then my curved crosshatch is kind of recessed and it just peeks out in behind those spaces. And then this felt a little empty to me, so I just put a simple echo inside. So I mean, I really only just used from this point to that point, and that was it.
I mean, you literally use the bare minimum and of the stencil itself.
Yeah.
And in this case, you would not have to mark the whole stencil necessarily, or
No.
would you?
No, I mean, if you've got a ruler that has some markings on the inside of it, then you can very easily get the half-inch spacing, I'm guessing, for a channel like this, and then the echoes. So if you have a curved ruler, you're just really stitching from point to point and then using the lines on your ruler to create your echoes and channels and spaces to hold your design in. So yeah, it is really bare bones, but I mean, it's again just another way to suggest that, hey, you don't have to use all of the stencil, or you can use the whole stencil.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
Right. It is, because it just makes every stencil that you own, you're going to go and look at and think, how can I change this just a little bit and make it work?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
see, I would mark the whole stencil. I always do, just because, and I know it's hard. Like some people can't ignore those lines. You know what I mean? And that I know sometimes that's just a lot to look at, but I've kind of gotten to where I can look right past that. But I always, it's nice to have them there, because once I stitch whatever I thought I was going to stitch. Sometimes I'll see something in those lines that I didn't use that I could somehow use too. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I probably would have got those little background pieces and been like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do in here.
Mhm.
You know, and then maybe I'd use, I don't know what, but that's kind of why.
Well, and you still could, right? Like on this one, we could put this big thing in the front, and then you could still use those in the other sections and just
Mhm.
maybe bring the point to this middle line
Right. Instead of, yeah.
instead of bringing it like there so it's chopped off. Like just go from this angle to there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just the
Yeah.
awesome way to design, really.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, so super fun.
Okay, this one was mine, and the only part of the stencil that I used was the 2 outside lines, because I just thought, with the piano key and with the fill in the center, like if you used a nice full bat, then that would really pop up, that negative space would really pop up in the stencil area. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
And I don't know, I'm a piano key fan. I just love the way it fills the space and it takes up, any extra bulk that's in a border. So that's how I decided to use it.
It's
Yeah.
very pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a nice frame on either side of the busier swirls.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then again, those they're not arcs, but whatever they are, shark teeth, I don't know what they are. They would pop out because they're not
Yeah.
quilted at all on the inside there. So I think that gives a little bit of negative space for the eye to rest between all of the busyness of the fill and the piano keys.
Mhm. Does anyone crave ice cream right now?
Ice
Karen, I crave ice cream all the time. I don't know
I'm
what
feeling, I'm feeling ice cream cone vibes.
No, I think they look like boomerangs.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Thank
They
you.
do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think they look like the little Star Trek emblems.
Yeah.
They don't, but that's what
And
my
I've never
mind
even
sees.
seen Star Trek.
They're
It
all,
was fun though.
yeah. Okay, guys, this is your printable handout that you get to do the same exact thing that we just did.
No,
And-
we want them to do their own.
Oh,
Well, no, the same exact thing, meaning play with the stencil. That's what I meant, guys.
ah,
Play with the stencil. You just get to experiment and have fun. So when you're printing this out, if you want, you could try printing it out, a little bit faded if you wanted to, or when you print it out, draw with a color instead of a black pen, and that might help you see your designs and just be able to visualize what's there on the page as just your kind of like structure of your design, and then just play. You could also put a transparency sheet right over top of this page when you print it out, and just draw your design, but don't mark out the stencil. Draw your design that you're going to make from it, and then just pull your transparency away and look at it. And then you would see your design without the structural marks of the stencil in behind. So just some different ideas. Anybody else have any ideas for playing like this?
Well, just remember also it's not to scale.
Yeah.
When you're drawing on whether your screen or this, it's not truly to scale. So sometimes, and that gets into another ball of information, but scale doesn't always translate from drawing to quilting perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why you just need the actual stencil.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you can mark
Be
it
a
on black
collector.
paper.
Mm-hmm.
If you mark it on black paper, then you can draw on it with chalk pencil and,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the idea is have fun.
Yes.
Be creative.
Always.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
try
Don't
different
forget-
things, because if you try different things, you are gonna find something that you absolutely just love, and then you can utilize that and personalize it.
Yeah.
And if you do one you like, take a picture of it so you have it before you erase it or
Mhm.
Yep.
I
And
love
think
the idea of printing in grayscale though. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is really helpful. And I think we all teach quilting, and I think we probably have all heard people say to us that I just don't have the ideas, I don't have the creativity, right? And I think that these things give you a good starting off point. It's almost like a little training wheel or a handhold, just to say, okay, start here. Here's a space, right?
Mhm.
It's not so overwhelming when it's just wide and open and there's some division in those spaces. And then you can start to, I don't know, I kind of make the spaces smaller until I can visualize something in those spaces. So that's what the stencil does, right? It defines those spaces for you so that you can play inside them and have some fun. And so the more you are creative, the more creative you will be. So it spurs on more creativity. So print out, play with a bunch of different stencil styles, and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I have more ideas than I have stencils.
And you'll
Yeah.
need to just piece more quilts so that
Yeah.
you can
Right.
use the ideas you have.
Exactly.
And
And I-
again,
Right.
again, it gives you when you go to the quilt, you have an idea of what you're going to be doing. So you kind of have a map of what you're going to be doing instead of just getting up there going, wow, that's a lot of border to be quilting. What am I going to do with this thing? You've already at least partially figured it out. And like Karen said, you may have figured it out on paper and it doesn't translate the same way when you're quilting it because maybe the space on the quilt is larger than the paper, but you can make your adjustments from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Some of those things you can adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
Right. And the nice thing about that border design as well is that I don't know about you guys, but occasionally I get a quilt that has top and bottom borders that are wider than the side borders. And so where it's stacked like that, you could easily adapt that to make that work.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. Because on one side, if you did a piano key just to frame the outside edge, you could just make it a little longer on the other one, right?
Right.
Yeah. Or add an echo or something.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. All great ideas. Well, I hope everybody's had fun watching us show you what we came up with and that you are inspired to print the printable and do some playing on your own. And we will see you next time on the latest thread. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
I
Bye.